Okay, hello everybody. We have one student with us today, present in person, but I know you're all there too, so welcome and thank you for attending our immigration attorney and legal assistant overview, what it's like to be us. Olivia is from Liberty, and there's a lot of kids here from Hill High. And I went to Hill High myself. I graduated in 1999. It's like forever ago. But there's even people who graduated before me, so I'm not the oldest person that went to Hill High. So that makes me feel better. My nieces and nephews at Hill High are Edmund Larson and Maddie Larson was there. Bree and Ava Vile are my nieces. I love them a lot. They're really cool. So if you see them, tell them hello from me today at Hill High. They're really cool. Ava and Bree are in the band, and Eddie's on the soccer team. So just want to give shout out to them. So I'm an immigration attorney. Gisela is a legal assistant. We're going to kind of give you an overview of what it's like to become a legal assistant and an immigration attorney and what we do. So first off, our bios. You guys don't have our bios because you're not here, but Olivia has our bios. It's on the thing, and I'm sorry, but we will send this so that you guys can get this in an email so that you can see kind of the bullet points of what we're discussing today. And so just a brief overview. I went to Hill High. I then went to Brigham Young University in Hawaii, and I studied anthropology. And then while I was in Hawaii, I took some breaks. I worked with a survival therapy camp where I worked in the wilderness with a backpack with kids, troubled teens, they'd say, but it's just kids who, didn't really get along in high school necessarily and needed a change of pace. Some of them had harder issues, but wandered around the wilderness with them for 8 months. And then I went back to university. And then I took another break and I went on a mission for my church and I learned French. And then I came back to Oregon after my mission. My mission was in the Madagascar islands of Mauritius and Reunion, where they're both French speaking. They have some Creoles and they also speak some English. So I learned some Creole and I learned some French, and I came back here and I was like, everybody speaks Spanish. Why this French is useless? So then I went back to school and I took a year of Spanish. And in that year of Spanish, it was really hard to switch from French into Spanish, and it's still, Gisela can attest, I still have a hard time mixing the two languages up. But I learned enough that I was then able to go to Guatemala, and I studied the Mayan women of Guatemala, the Quiche region in Momostenango. My brothers were there teaching English, and they're like, oh, you should really come here and do your senior project here. It's a really interesting cultural place. So I was able to spend 3 months there, and I interviewed with midwives and younger girls who were kind of in high school transitioning into college. I don't know if you know a lot about the Quiche region, but they're very traditional. The Mayan women there, they wear their huipiles, they wear their whole costume. That's their traditional costume, basically. And it's really a big part of their identity, but they're often discriminated against when they wear that. And so when they go to university, they're thought of as less intelligent and they aren't given job opportunities. So they were then having to decide, do I shed my cultural identity in order to be able to get a job, or do I keep it and try and pave my way? And it was a very difficult decision for a lot of these women. And so I was able to talk with them, and I was very encouraged in my Spanish because it's their second language as well, and so they were very patient with my Spanish, and they allowed me to have tons of errors but still was able to communicate with them, which I really appreciated. And so that encouraged me to continue with my Spanish. I took more courses in Spanish when I went back. I graduated, but then I went to law school, and I didn't really study Spanish anymore. I married a guy who's fluent in Spanish. And so he and I would continue to speak in Spanish together, but my Spanish was not great, just so I can attest. I did a lot of different kinds of law, but I always wanted to do immigration law. And when the time was right in life, which was just last year, I was able to say, okay, I don't care. Either I get a job in immigration law or I start and I figure it out myself. This is all I want to do is immigration work. And so I went and I interviewed with Candace Vanderwell, who's the owner of Vanderwell Immigration. I said, I have no immigration experience, but I have a lot of attorney experience and I'm a good attorney. My Spanish is bad. Let me tell you how bad. And I had another attorney there and she tested my Spanish. She's like, it's bad, but she can learn. And then, and they hired me. They trusted that I had enough attorney experience that I could learn immigration law and become an immigration attorney. And then Candace bought me some training that I took for my first 3 months. All I was doing is studying immigration law. I was also working cases with the help of Gisela, and other legal assistants would come in and they would translate for me. And then Gisela would spend as much time as we could every day practicing my Spanish and getting better at Spanish.
And she's gotten better.
I've gotten better.
I left her alone a lot, so.
Yeah. The first 6 months, I told Candace, I was like, give me 6 months and then I'll be able to do this on my own, but don't trust me right now without some help. And so, yeah, then that 6 months, I was like, okay, I got this. She said, even when I did it, I was like, I gotta have this. And then I would make mistakes. I'd go back and ask Gisela, okay, this is what I said. How do I say it better? And now Gisela still helps me as often as we can, which isn't as often as I'd like, but we try and get together and then we go through things and get my Spanish better. And I study on my own and I speak with my husband almost totally in Spanish so that I can get my Spanish better. So our kids get really frustrated because they can't understand us, but they're actually learning Spanish now just from hearing us speak it all the time at home, which is really fun. My husband came, he was telling, we had a friend over, my friend Ranger is a 7-year-old, so I have 4 kids, and Ranger's the youngest and he's 7, and his friend Freddie was over, and my husband said, shut the door in Spanish, said, cerra la puerta, and Tuli was like, you don't speak Spanish, but I don't either, but I understand a lot. This is my daughter. She's like, he just said, shut the door. And she went and shut the door. And she was so proud of herself. And I was so proud of her too, that they've had this exposure now and they're starting to understand. So that's a little bit about me. Gisela, you want to introduce yourself?
So my name is Gisela. I'm originally from California. I am a first generation, yes, Californian or American.
American.
American. There
Yeah.
you go. My parents are from Mexico. They immigrated 26 years ago. So it's just been a lot of like that exposure to immigration and how that affects families. And also like learning all the language barriers as well, because I was Spanish speaking first. Spanish speaking first, and then English is my second language. It's still very hard, but it just gets a little bit better, little by little. As for
Your English is great. That's no problem.
I did my studies pretty much in California. I went to University of Laverne, which is a private little school. If you guys have seen downtown Beaverton, that's the size of my actual school. So it was nice. It was intimate. I majored. I think it was like a class of 2000.
Okay.
Oh my God. And my year only. So yeah, it's very, 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 very small. But it was cool. It was just like more intimate. You didn't have to go too far to go to your class. You know, you were all there, so it was nice and easy. You didn't have much of a excuse not to park or find parking. I majored in criminology and minored in biology. So my idea was to go into forensic science. I loved it. I never watched the shows, but I loved that whole idea and exposure to that. But at the same time, while I was in college, I was also helping out my parents with their immigration process. So unfortunately, the type of attorney that they got, the attorney was very busy and she was a sole practitioner and no extra help.
What does it mean to be a sole practitioner?
I believe it means that she's just like working on her own. She has her own business, but she's the only attorney. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
awesome.
Yeah.
So she didn't have an assistant with her. Pretty much any clients that would come in and have like a person that's able to either speak the language of English or be tech savvy would be the ones to help her out. So I had that exposure with this attorney. So I had an idea of what immigration was like, especially more on a personal level. It was very tough, but we got through it, which is awesome. So
and both your parents were able to get legal status.
Yes, they were both able to get legal status. So just like seeing that exposure of like the triumph that they have is so awesome. And then we could also see that with our clients today, which is really cool. And you just get to celebrate. We take pictures with them. You can see it on all our social media. We have like all those celebrations with them as well. And so throughout that time, after I graduated, I got into the whole forensics. I did fingerprinting for a while. I was doing ride-alongs with police officers. Had exposure with like the crime scenes and did all these extra certifications. But then there was a point where I couldn't continue with that because it was just not something that connected with me anymore. It was just out of my passion. So what I ended up doing was I went back to school and I did a certification program for translation and interpretation. I was like, might as well have that extra skill. I already have it. I just need to hone in on it. So I got better with translations and speaking Spanish and like learning other words, especially legal terms, because it's completely different play field, also with medical. So with that, I went in and decided to learn more about domestic violence because that was like another extra field, right? So I did that for a while. I did translation as well for medical field. So I had that extra exposure with like people. But with my main interest being in domestic violence, I was able to become a legal advocate, which is pretty much kind of like a paralegal type of work, but you're also doing like a social work at the same time and just trying to get them like the right path that they need to get that extra help. Because most of those clients that I had were also immigrants. So I got that extra exposure to humanitarian roles or positions, which was like a U visa or a VAWA. So we were able to get that extra exposure. So because I decided to move it over to Portland, I was like, might as well either find another job with domestic violence and helping those people, or I could probably go into immigration because I kind of have that background. Also, I was able to luckily find my place in immigration or Paralegals immigration, and it's been 2 years and almost a half already that I've been there, and honestly, I love it. I get to wake up every day and be like, I get to go to work today. It also just helps having like the type of people, coworkers, you know, that are very supportive, very hands-on with you, as well as like trying to help you be a better person. So that's very helpful. So that's how I got into immigration.
So it's a little bit about our backgrounds. Immigration law is pretty big. There's family immigration, there's these humanitarian parole issues, but there's also business immigration. So if you want to make a lot of money as an immigration attorney, don't do family-based. Well, that's what I do. Don't do that. If you want to make a lot of money, do business immigration. Business immigration you don't get quite the same reward that you do with a family-based as far as like you feel like you're doing good. Family-based, you really get that, like, it's super rewarding. We're helping people every day and it's changing their lives, literally. And they come to us and they haven't been able to find help, and we can help them and we can get them so that they're not afraid that they're going to be deported anymore. They're not afraid that they're not going to be able to support their kids like they want to. And they get that legal paper that says, okay, you're now here legally in the US, you can work legally, you don't have to be afraid. As long as you don't commit any crimes, you're basically good to go. If somebody's does something real bad, once they have that legal work, that legal residency, it's called a green card, but it's also called an LPR card, legal residency permit. If somebody gets caught trafficking drugs or kills somebody, they're not going to be able to get their citizenship. They might get deported when they have that green card. But basically, other things, they're going to be okay. And then they can get their citizenship, and then they're really okay, which is such a good feeling for a lot of people who have been living in fear. They say that they're living in shadows, right? And some of your parents might be experiencing this, where they're here and they've come without a visa, or they've come with a visa and they stayed past their visa, and now they want to stay here because they started a family here and they really have a life, but they don't have that legal right to work, and they're not recognized as a full individual in this country, and they feel like they have to hide themselves almost. And so to be able to then be somebody who's legally here, they're more successful in business, which helps our economy. They're more present with their family because they don't have that fear anymore. So overall, it makes for a more healthy society and stronger families when that person doesn't have to live in fear. And so that's why there are the petitions that we have. They're not perfect. The legal immigration field in the US is not perfect. There's a lot of problems with it. But as I do it more, I appreciate what we have, especially compared to other countries. We have a lot of pathways that other countries don't recognize for individuals if somebody were to move to a new country and try to become a resident. So I do appreciate what we do have and recognize the weaknesses in the system. And we have a very, very robust industry that's behind making good changes in the system. It's called American Immigration Lawyers Association. So that's kind of the industry on the side of individuals trying to get residency. That's the organization that's always pushing for better laws. They're pushing to protect those with DACA. DACA is kids who have been born outside of the country, but they came in really young. This is all they know. This is the only life that they know. And they are able to have a work permit, but they're not full legal residencies. And this is a program that Obama started. And it's a great program, but that's in the court systems right now. And so AILA is really fighting to keep that as a program. But there's other organizations fighting against it who don't want that to be a program. And so it's going to eventually go up to the Supreme Court and they'll decide whether that's a program that can stay or not. And we, as immigration attorneys, are always encouraging those with DACA to pursue legal residency in any avenue that they can. So if you know anybody who has DACA, tell them, go see an immigration attorney, don't wait. They need to take care of it now. So do you want to talk about family-based petitions, what the options are? And then I'll get into the humanitarian petitions.
So for family-based petitions, it's a little bit easier, honestly. You have a U.S. citizen spouse petitioning for the immigrant spouse. We have a child petition, which is a U.S. citizen child petitioning their parent, or there's a parent petition for their children, a USC parents, or a sibling petition, which is a U.S. citizen child or sibling petition for their their immigrant sibling. And then there's a legal resident spouse that can also do a petition, kind of get the ball rolling for them, and also a legal resident child can petition for them. So the basis is, if you're a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident, you can petition for your parent. Of course, depending on the background of like your parents' experience or that immigrant's experience would kind of like trigger how to help them out. We also have parole in place, which is for military parents or spouses. It would be either the child or the spouse who are U.S. citizens petitioning for their parents or spouse who are in the military. And for that, Alicia has a lot of experience with that. It's honestly a lot better, especially if that parent or that non-immigrant person has an illegal entry. They get to have a visa within the U.S. They don't have to go out of the country. And then we can get them adjusted for the residency step, which is a lot shorter than you would with the U.S. citizen petition or a legal resident petition if the person came in without a legal entry.
So that's a really important point. I even say that's not a word. Sorry. It's a really important point. This legal entry versus non-legal entry, and so a lot of people think, oh, I have a kid who's 21, they can petition for me now. And so they'll come into my office and I'll say, okay, how can I help you? And they'll say, well, my kid's 21, so I want to get my residency. And so then I have to say, okay, that's great. I'm really glad that you have a kid who's 21, who's a US citizen. That opens up a lot of options. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you automatically are able to get your residency. So I have to ask them a lot of questions. So one of the important jobs that I do is these intakes. So a client will make an appointment with our firm. They'll go through a screening process because we don't want everybody to come in and they have to pay $150 to talk with me that first time. If they have a case, then we apply that towards the case and it helps them. But if they don't have a case, then they lose $150. So we try and screen before they come to me to say, okay, do you have a case or do you not? The legal assistants are screening for these. And if it sounds like they have a case, say, okay, it's $150, you'll get to talk with an attorney. And then it's my job to ask all the questions, like, how did you come to the U.S.? When did you come to the U.S.? Did you ever leave the U.S.? What did you do when you left the U.S.? How did you leave the U.S.? How did you come back to the U.S.? Did you have a visa? Did your passport get stamped? Did they record it? Did they take your fingerprints? Did they catch you at the border and then give you a deportation order? Or did they just send you back? Did you have to talk to a judge? So I have to ask all these questions to figure out what is the actual history of this person. And how could they get caught? Like, what are the things that when I file this petition are going to be red flags for USCIS as the government body that approves these petitions? What are they going to be looking for? And is this petition going to be denied? Because I don't want to do a whole petition, have this person pay for it, and then have denials. So I had to figure out, do they need waivers? There's a lot of waivers, but it's immigration law is the second most complicated kind of law. Tax is the most complicated, immigration is the second. If you wanna really like break your head, be a tax lawyer. I don't recommend. Immigration's more fun. But if you want to break your head, do immigration, because it's every day. Every day there's rules that are changing. There's policies that are changing. The way that they're approving these is changing. One time we file an application and we've done it like this for years and it's worked. And then they decide, well, actually, that's not going to work anymore. You've got to do it this way. And so then, or they don't even tell us how we have to do it. Then we have to guess how we have to do it. So then we're talking to other attorneys in the area. Have you done one with this new, whatever they're requiring? Yeah, this worked. This didn't work. No, I haven't. But when you do it, tell me what happens so I know how to do it. So the industry is very close in that way. But this legal entry, to get back to my point, legal entry versus non-legal entry. If someone has a non-legal entry, it's going to be a lot harder for them to be able to get their residency. There are some possibilities where they could go out to Mexico or wherever they're from and have an interview in that country and be approved to come back in. But that almost always requires a waiver. And the waivers right now are taking up to 6 years.
3 to 4 that we've seen kind of coming in, but because of the backlog caused by COVID, everything is just, you know, taking a lot longer than expected, which does change the trajectory of when the clients, you know, can get that physical green card, right? So it's just a long waiting game with immigration right now.
It's like a 6-year process from start to go into your interview. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, because the waiver process. Before the waivers, they were seeing them approved in a year or less. And then when COVID happened, it all slowed down. They had a huge backlog, and now they're, the last one we saw was 44 months, I think. It took 44 months for it to be approved. So,
to talk about like the whole entry, non-entry stuff or the consultations just alone, we have seen a lot of clients, at least with immigration. You're gonna probably get a lot of clients if you become an attorney say, I have had this friend or this family member who did the exact same thing that I did, and they got it a lot quicker. Just keep in mind to be patient with them, because not every case is the same. So that's why we do a lot of these consultations and extra screenings, just to make sure we are able to help out this person.
Yeah, because everybody hears a story, they're like, well, that's my story. Like, well, not really, because there's this other thing that also affects your story.
It's a lot of puzzle work.
Yeah. Humanitarian petitions. So humanitarian petitions are, you have refugees who come to the US, there's refugees and there's asylees. So they're two different categories. A refugee is somebody who's fled their own country and they can't go back to their country because of persecution for a certain reason. Race, nationality, religion, part of a particular social group, and political opinion. I didn't used to be able to name those off. I'm proud of myself. I did that. Thank you. So those are the reasons for being able to claim refugee status and also asylee status. So you see a lot of this going on in Africa right now. There's a lot of displacement also in Central and South America. Where the political climate is such that person is no longer safe in that country, or they've been targeted because they're a woman, an indigenous woman, or so there's lots of reasons why people are displaced. They go to a camp as a refugee. You go to a refugee camp. In the refugee camps, they have immigration officials basically who are there to interview them in person to see if they qualify to be able to be resettled in the US or another country. And so if they qualify as basically under one of these 5 reasons that they fled and that it's too dangerous for them to go back, then they can be resettled in another country. And when you come as a refugee, you basically come with an approved, ready to be approved green card. You don't get the green card right away, but you get like a work permit so they can start working right away. There's refugee resettlement agencies that help them get settled in the new country. And then in the US, after you've been here for a year, you can apply for your residency. So you get that green card, and then you're a legal resident. You can travel, you can come back and forth, you can get your citizenship. As an asylee, it's different. An asylee is someone who's left their country and come directly to the US. They haven't applied for refugee status or asylum status in any other country. They've just come to the border often and said, I need to apply for asylum. And so at the border, they're screened initially. They do a questionnaire like, why are you claiming asylum. And if they are approved in for asylum to have a case of asylum, they're let into the US and they can live with somebody, a family member, or they can just live on their own. But then it's up to them to actually file their application for asylum with the court. And so that application for asylum is a very complicated application. There's specific things that you need to put in there to make sure that you're actually going to be approved for asylum. Asylum cases are denied. 80 to 90% of asylum cases are denied.
Wow.
So the court in Oregon is horrible. It's horrible. I came in and they told me that the immigration court was a kangaroo court. So if you've ever heard, a kangaroo court basically means it's not really a court. Like they don't really follow normal court rules. So I came and I was like, how bad could it be? It's really bad. The judges are leaving all the time. They're putting new judges in all the time. You don't know how those judges are. So you try and look at the judges' records, where they come from. Sometimes they have a record, sometimes they don't. Our judge our court in Oregon, we now have 3 judges. One of them is brand new. We have no idea how he's going to decide cases. I have a case with him in February. Nobody else has had a case with him. So I don't know if my case is going to win or lose. I hope it's a good case. We have all the factors that it should be in place, but that judge could just decide to not approve it because he's in a bad mood that day. They don't really care about precedents. Other courts care about precedents. If a judge has a certain amount of denials that are overturned, that judge is eventually going to get kicked out. But in the immigration world, I don't see that happening. So even if this judge denies a lot, those cases can be appealed, but it's so expensive for these individuals to appeal a case that often they won't even get appealed. So they don't really care if they deny them; they're not going to get kicked out. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at for as far as like asylum. So a lot of people are bad mouthing what's happening at the border. The border right now is in crisis. It's for sure. There are so many people coming to the border claiming asylum, needing asylum. These aren't fake cases. They aren't just leaving their home because they want to. Like they think, oh, America's better, I'm gonna leave. No, they're gonna die if they stay where they're at. And they're coming to the border, and now there's a huge influx of people, and the administration is trying to figure out how to keep people safe in the best manner. But because the border is so overrun, the detention centers are overrun, they're not taken care of properly. There needs to be so much more money put into immigration in order for it to function properly. Sorry, that's my soapbox. So refugees, asylees. Then there's adjustments. So the adjustments, whenever you hear the word adjustments in immigration, it means adjusting from no status to status. So you get somebody who doesn't have any legal status and now they're going to become a legal resident. So that's an adjustment. So an adjustment of status, you can adjust once you win an asylum case. If you do, which I have seen some win, if you win, then after a year of being in asylee status, you get your green card and you can adjust. So we do those. We also do U visas. So if somebody's a victim of a crime, I don't know if any of you listen to the Spanish radio, but there's a lot of attorneys that advertise on there about if you're a victim of a crime, make sure you call an attorney because you could be eligible for your residency, which is true. So we always say, if you've been a victim of a crime, you have to report it to the police. When you report it to the police, if the crime qualifies, if your house was robbed and you weren't there, it's not going to qualify. If your house was robbed, you were there, and the guy had a gun, you're going to qualify. If
you were hit in a car accident, that doesn't qualify.
If it was an accident, it doesn't qualify. If somebody specifically targeted you in your car and they came after you and you can prove it, then it's going to be assault, and that's going to qualify. If your kid was abused, or if you were sexually abused, or if it was domestic violence, that always qualifies. So if you were in a situation where you were a victim of a crime and you reported to the police, you can bring that police report to an immigration attorney and we'll analyze to see if this is going to qualify. And then we send it to the police and they have to certify it that yes, it's a qualifying crime. And then we can send it out, they can get their U visa, but it's a 10-year wait right now for a U visa. So everything's huge. So you send it in, they can get their work permit after 4 years, but then they have to wait the full 10 years before they get their legal residency.
Sorry to correct you. They get their work permit within like 4 to 5 years, and then like by the 6th or 10th year, they get their visa that they will have a legal entry. Right, but then they have to prove a whole 3 years after that they've been here, they haven't moved, they haven't left the country, because with the U visa, getting that visa does not mean that they can leave and come back like a regular resident, right? It just means that they have a legal proof of entry, but they have to complete 3 years of residency. before they do the adjustment to become a resident. So it's a long waiting game for that one. And it takes this long, the 6 to 10 years, because everyone in the nation applies for U visa, right? So they only, I think, grant about like 150,000 per year.
Wow.
And so nationwide, right? There's a lot of applicants. Unfortunately, there's a lot of like domestic violence cases, abuse cases, based on children, any of those situations. So there's gonna be a lot of people applying for it. And it's just a long waiting game, but it is very rewarding at the end because they finally get that, social security, they get that work permit, and they get that visa and have less to go through or less traumatizing with that as well. So with U visas or any of these humanitarian petitions, we just have to be very careful and mindful of their situation.
Yeah, the U visas are hard. That's one of the hard parts about being an immigration attorney, especially family-based. You're not going to see this with business immigration, but family-based will often have people come in and we have to review these police reports, and they're pretty horrendous at times. Sometimes we had one client who, there's a lot of different humanitarian visas. You can see there's a U visa, there's a VAWA, there's a T visa. There's also some other ones that are like, we don't do them as often. But I had a lady come in and she was eligible for a U visa, a T visa, and the VAWA. She had been a victim in so many ways since she was 15. And her story was, it was so sad. But we were able to help her, and she's able to get her residency through all of those, but we picked one. She didn't need to apply for all of them. So yeah, that U visa, VAWA is a victim of abuse by a USC spouse, a legal resident spouse, or a child. So often we have parents who have kids who are 21, who are citizens, who don't treat them well, who are taking advantage of them. They're financially taking advantage of them. They verbally abuse them.
Yeah, they're threatened by like calling immigration.
They say that I'm going to call immigration on you. So all of that is abuse. And if that's happening to a parent, then we can file for their legal residency because of that abuse. Because really what should be happening is that kid should be saying, okay, I'm 21 now. How can I help you get your residency? You know?
I have a question. So when they turn 21, do they automatically have citizenship, or how does that work when they're?
So these are kids who are 21 who were born here.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So then once they're 21, they can file the petition for.
Yeah, so
Consider it
technically-
21 to start a petition, you know, like you have like an idea of what you're doing. Is the, so to speak, if you're the one petitioning for your
Yeah.
parents, right? But like 21 is like that, like, I don't know, just like a regular standard, right? For
Immigration, there's like a couple different age things, but 21's the big, like when you're 21, you're legally able to petition for your parents.
Gotcha.
If you were married, if you're a US citizen and you married a non-US citizen, you don't have to be 21 to petition for your spouse. It's more the parent. Yeah. 21's also the cutoff. If a parent's petitioning for you, it's a lot quicker. You can just adjust status if you're under 21. But if you're over 21, you get kicked onto what's called a visa bulletin. The visa bulletin was a new thing to me. You can just type in visa bulletin, and it comes every month. There's a new visa bulletin, and it tells you how long the wait times are for your category of petition. So there's like 5 different categories of family-based petitions on there where like if somebody is petitioning for their brother, like say I want to petition for my brother. I'm a US citizen, I can petition for my brother. But my brother's over 21 and married. Fine, doesn't matter how old this brother is, or if they have kids or not kids, I can petition for them. But that's going to be pending for 21 years right now. It's longer if you're from Mexico. So these petitions, people often say, well, why don't people just like get legal status? It's super not easy. It's very complicated. And there are some where that, hey, we can do this. It's going to be easy, but not easy, but we can do it. TV says sometimes people are trafficked into the US. The way that they're trafficked is they're promised work when they arrive, they're not able to work, or they're working and they're being forced to work without pay. So that could be a trafficking situation. Sex trafficking is also a thing. People are forced into sex labor. They're brought from from whatever country into the US thinking that they're going to be doing something, and then they're forced into sex work. There are other situations for a T visa, but that's the sort of thing where it's a really hard story, but if we can tell it correctly, then they can get that. They can also eventually get their residency. So the next category that we want to talk about is what does it take? What are the sort of qualities and skills that you wanna be, that you wanna have as in the immigration field? So,
Either
do
for
you wanna-
both attorneys or paralegals.
yeah, these are like, these work for both.
As I earlier stated, we have to have like patience with these clients, you know, especially for those seeking humanitarian positions or even family-based, but you see it more in humanitarian because you are going over their whole story all over again, right? So imagine like for you yourself, like something bad happens to you. Do you want to remember it? No, you don't want to even tell it ever again. So in these situations, we have to kind of guide them again, what happens, we can tell their story exactly. But they also have to speak with a therapist. They might have to do their own declarations. They might have to seek people to like help them like add proof to it. So it's just a lot of re-traumatization for them. So it's a lot of patience, a lot of empathy is also needed. A sense of urgency is also needed because you want this case to get done, you know, but you also want to make sure that the client is also very much invested in this. So just that urgency to get things done, right? Not leave things lagging or pending for so long for you to get to them. So no procrastination, in other words. Organization is pretty much having spreadsheets clean that you can understand them. If, for example, there tends to be turnover for any reason, you're able to give that as same spreadsheet to someone else so that they can also work it out. Putting things or the files in their proper location or having them accessible to you so you could easily work it up. Or even organizing your file, how you're gonna like prepare it, right, to give it to the attorney so it makes it easier for review and we're not dragging the process longer. Ability to multitask. You have emails, you have phone calls, you have people randomly coming in. There's a reason, at least for our firm, we like to have appointments. It's strict, so we have all the time that we need to talk to that person, right? Do better one-on-one. So just a lot of things happening all at once, or randomly an attorney finishes a review and says, "Here, finish this up." So we gotta like do that and switch gears. So it's a lot of being flexible. Empathy, again, just having an understanding of where these clients are coming from. For some family-based sides, stuff, because the process for regular consular process, which is they apply here, they do a waiver here because they have an illegal entry, and then they have to go out of the country to come back in with a visa. That one right now we're seeing like up to 6 years, right? Just to get to that point of a visa. So we have to be very much empathetic with them and understand that it's not their fault, it's not our fault, it's a whole different beast that we cannot like touch really. So we just have to be mindful of like their frustrations as well. And it's nothing on us. So even though we are very emotional sometimes, friendliness, you know, having that presentable face because they are entrusting you with their case, their money, and their time. Right? Even as an attorney or a paralegal, it doesn't matter. We just have to be very friendly with them because we want to do good things for them. And there's a lot of scams out there as well about like attorney, or people saying, "Hey, I can help you out with this case, and you just have to give me $5,000 right off the bat." And all right, bye. So we have all those cases too that tend to like go with visa cases. But anyway,
People come to us after they've done scam. We don't scam.
yeah, we don't scam. We do our best to very much avoid that. Bilingual is a plus. With immigration, at least you get like people who are out of the country, coming in, right? So asylum, petitioners or refugee. So all those people come from different countries that have a different language. They don't know the English language, or we get those who are, for example, from Guatemala, a lot who are indigenous. So they have a very, very strong accents or different dialects. So their Spanish is also second language. So we just have to like do our best to like help them out. Of course, there's translation services out there, but it's also very hard because sometimes they may have to pay for it and they don't have the means to do it. So being bilingual is a plus. If not, don't worry about it. You can always learn. Heard it from Alicia herself. So she's learning, she's learned, and she's a lot more confident and better with the language. And also attention to deadlines. Some of these cases are very different, especially humanitarian cases when it comes to refugee or asylum, dealing with court. The court tends to have all these random deadlines with like a month notice. So it's very hard, exactly, your face says it all. So, it's very hard to like be, oh, I'm gonna take my time with this, so you have to go really quick, and just be, again, very flexible. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think you have to learn how to swear.
Yeah.
I came in, I didn't swear a lot before I became an immigration attorney, and then I was like, wow, everybody swears for a lot. And then I really like it just like, there's just a lot of reasons to use some bad words, because things happen that you're like, oh, this shouldn't be happening. So there's a lot of swearing, with not in front of the clients. It's usually like as we're like venting our frustration
I
to each
mean,
other.
clients may even swear to you because they have to, like, for example, the VOW or the U visa or even T visas, right? Where it's more things that have happened to them, that trauma. You have to ask them, okay, so how were these people verbally aggressive to you?
What did they say?
What did they say exactly? Don't worry about hurting me, because, you know,
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to say what happened to you, but it's very hard because some of them will not want to say anything. But you need that information to make the case a lot stronger. So you have to be comfortable with hearing all these swear words. But again, don't say it in front of the client.
I have slipped a few times, like hearing a story, like, you know, said a bad word, and I was like, I'm so sorry. They're like, no, I mean, I said it too. Like, okay, all right. I had to have Gisela teach me some swear words in Spanish, because I was getting clients who were saying some swear words and I wasn't 100% following. So it's like, okay, you got to give me all the swear words. She's like, but I don't swear. Like, sorry, you can
Yeah.
give it to me.
At least with the household that I grew up, it was no swearing whatsoever, especially in Spanish, because that would have been a lot more, more grounds for being grounded, if you will.
Because your parents would understand. Yeah, so she had to go and tell her mom that she had to teach me swear words, and
So she wouldn't get mad at me. Anyway,
yeah.
she doesn't even live with me.
Okay, so those are kind of the aptitudes you have to have. I would also say, as an attorney, and even as a paralegal, it's really important to network. So I know that like you all are coming out of COVID, where you've really been secluded and isolated. You're doing all these video calls. Olivia's here present. Thank you, Olivia. And thank you for even coming up. Not that I'm not grateful that you're here and listening, but it's so important to, when you have the opportunity, meet someone in person, take that opportunity, meet them in person, go network with people. Olivia, today, like, I'm gonna give you my card. I want you to reach out, email me, stay in contact. You all too, you're welcome to reach out. Say, hey, I heard you on this thing, and I think that you're the person I talked to or that I listened to. Just want to introduce myself. Make those connections. As an attorney, that's the most important work that I've done as an attorney, is connecting with people. There's only so much you can learn on your own, and then you really need people to help you. And so I think as an attorney also, you're supposed to be smart, right? Like, we go to law school, we think this far, you think you're smart, right? You think you're smarter than other people. You're not. You're just as smart as the next person. People have skills that you don't have that you need. And if you're not willing to ask the questions and be humble and say, hey, I want to learn about this one thing. I want to be able to do this thing. Here's what I've figured out. Can you help me fill in the gaps? People are, especially in the immigration field, immigration attorneys are super helpful, because there is a ton of work that needs to be done. There's not enough good people doing it. There's people doing it, not always good. And so we want people to be doing it well. We want our clients to be able to, even if they're not our clients, we want to know that those in the immigration world that need help are getting the help they need, and they're getting it done well, and they're not wasting their money, and they're not wasting their years where they could have been a legal resident and they're not. So be willing to make those connections, be personable, be friendly, remember people. I don't always remember names, but you try to remember faces. Some people remember faces and they don't remember names, and vice versa. But use whatever tools you have to be a friendly, kind person, and be willing to help others, and expect that others are going to be willing to help you in return. And that's really how you become a better attorney, because there's a lot of education that's available. There's a lot of specialties. There's niche kind of areas of being an attorney. But if you're not willing to talk to people, you're never going to really find your niche and figure out what you're really good at. So don't be afraid.
Also, I would like to add having initiative to, either help another paralegal with any caseload that they have. A lot of the caseload may be overwhelming, so I will help. Having that lending hand or giving that lending hand over to other people in need is very much a great skill and aptitude to have just in general. Obviously, if you're able to. Also, for example, Alicia and I, we both started, a new, branch within immigration called CIJA. It's very much brand new to our law firm. Other law firms have done it, but not to the full extent that we're doing it. So having that initiative of starting a new thing, doing our research, has honestly brought a lot more relief to our clients, especially those who came in without a parent. For example, they're called UACs, unaccompanied children, minors, who came in, for example, Guatemala or other countries, came in seeking asylum right at the border, but because the immigration process is just too long, how court is right now, it's just pretty much impossible, and it's just a long waiting game. So what the Stitches program is, it's they get to have someone who's taking care of them here, right? Doesn't have to be even a family member, but they're able to be responsible for them as a guardian. So now we're digging into like the family courts, if you will, about guardianship. And then when that's settled in, we get to do all the other process for immigration, which is like an I-360 position, which is for those seeking protection as juveniles or minors. And then from there, they get to also do a long waiting process for just like 4 to 5 years to get their visa to then become a resident. So it's a little bit quicker, and they get out of the immigration court, and therefore they don't have to spend so much more money on that.
Yeah, so that was something that, because I had other experience when I became an immigration attorney, I was able to start that project with Gisela, because it's all different. So it's different courts. You have the circuit court system, which is the county circuit court system. So Washington County has a court on Main Street, and that's where all the circuit court activity happens. And then there's the federal court system, which is, federal sort of cases are like immigration is a federal case. There is a USCIS, which is a program within the federal court system, but that's where you're going to have federal court cases, bigger cases like bankruptcy, state cases are going to be more federal. But when you have everything a case that's like just state specific, so all of your family court stuff, property court stuff, criminal stuff, civil, like if you want to sue somebody who owes you money, that's all going to go through the circuit court system. Most attorneys in immigration law have no idea what happens in the circuit court system, because they don't even need to have a license in the state to practice immigration law, because it's all federal. So we have attorneys in our firm who have licenses from California and from New York. And then we have me and the founder who have our licenses in Oregon, because that's where we got our licenses originally. So none of those other attorneys could even do this because they're not licensed in Oregon. In order to practice in the circuit court system, you have to be licensed in the state that you're in. So I had that license already, and I had the experience of handling cases in the circuit court system. So I was able to say, hey, this is a circuit court kind of process. Let me figure this out with the help of Gisela, because like processes are hard. In law, no matter what kind of law you're doing, you have a whole process. You have the intake, you have working up the file, you have filing the file correctly, serving the file correctly, making sure that you get the final outcome of the file. And in all of that, there's like a lot of moving parts. So Gisela really helped me fine tune, like, what's our process going to be? Because I'm going to do the intake, but then they basically have to do all the work, because I can't, as an attorney, I can't actually help a lot of people if I'm doing all the work, because that's a lot of petitions, that's a lot of meeting with clients, and that can be handled by paralegals who don't need to have like the legal field background. They don't need to have that education. They need to be trained, but they don't need to be licensed to do that part of the work. So paralegals do the majority of the work in all of these cases. We figure out what should be done, and then we tell the paralegals, and they do it. And then they come to us, and often they're like, I think you missed something. I'm like, yeah, I did totally miss that. Thanks for letting me know. Let's reanalyze this.
So it's a lot of back and forth, and it's a lot of like, hey, not like a supervision, but just like a double check, right? Like the whole branches, I forgot that whole process of like Congress, but like the checks and balances thing.
Yeah,
I remember. So it's a lot of that with ourselves, and just being mindful, like everyone makes mistakes. So we just have to be on top of our mistakes and make sure not to do them again, or just rectify them in an appropriate kind of manner.
Yeah, there are mistakes made. I think that's the hardest part of being an attorney, really. If you're thinking about being an attorney, you've got to be able to handle stress, because if you mess up a case, depending on the kind of law you're doing, it's really somebody's life. So it's like being a doctor in a sense, where, you know, if you're a doctor and somebody comes to you and you give them the wrong diagnosis, that could really affect them health-wise. If somebody comes to me and I say, you can do this, and I haven't actually reviewed everything, they could end up getting deported. So there's like some really big, major things that could happen in this person's life if I don't handle the case correctly. So you have to be able to handle that stress as an attorney. And when you first start, we have a lot of attorneys who have been attorneys for a long time in our office, and then we have some younger attorneys. And when you first start and you make that first mistake, man, you feel like the whole world is coming down on you. Like that anxiety and that like, oh, man, like this is when the swearing comes in. Like you just like, how did I miss this? But then you're an attorney longer and you make lots of mistakes. You're like, oh, that happened again. Okay, how do I fix this? Like you move on from the major stress of it. And if you become an attorney, figure out how to move on from that quicker, because the first couple of years is stressful when you make those mistakes. Just know that, especially as a young attorney, you're going to make those mistakes. It's going to happen. Everybody makes those mistakes. I don't know any attorney who hasn't made mistakes. But the key is, how do you fix it? How do you respond, and how do you problem solve and fix it the best way possible for the client? You can't shut down. So I guess that's also a thing to be reflective about yourself. Are you somebody who can, when you're in that fight or flight mode, are you somebody who can be reflective and take some breaths and then figure out, okay, how do I move forward? Or do you get stuck in that fight or flight mode? And if you get stuck in that, you're going to need to figure out how to move through that when you become an attorney. So just a heads up about that. That's getting real down to the nitty gritty, but there are a lot of, it's talked about a lot. There's a lot of suicide in the attorney field, and that's a big thing. They have attorneys for, they have attorneys for attorneys. They have therapists for attorneys. If you are licensed in Oregon, you have a free therapist. So go to that therapist. I've used a therapist before. It's important to have the conversations, be reflective, be in a situation where you like the team you're with. If you don't like the team you're with as an attorney, find a new team. Find people who will support you and who will help you be the best that you can be, because it's really miserable when you don't have a good team.
Yeah, and full disclosure, we have cried.
We cry all the
Out
time.
of frustration, out of the mistakes that have been made, but we are there to support each other, and that's what makes a really good team.
Yeah.
Be able to allow the person to be expressive in their own way, but then also be like, all right, get back up, because we gotta do this together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that can happen anywhere, really.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is really important to have that good team. Okay, so education that you need to be an attorney. You can graduate with anything in high school, study anything you want in high school. I know that there's like more like selective things you can do in high school than there used to be. You can then go get a bachelor's. You have to have a bachelor's. In the US, this is the process. You get a bachelor's and then you get your law degree. So you can study anything you want in your bachelor's. A lot of people study like political science or criminology, or so those are like some typical things that an attorney, like pre-attorney, there's even like pre-law.
History too.
History is a big one. Yeah. I studied anthropology. There's quite a bit of anthropology majors who then go into law school. Communications is a big one.
Business.
What was that?
That I graduated with my bachelor's of science in communications. So I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
can go to law school.
Yeah, no, you totally should. Yeah. So there's some really good options in Oregon for law school. You don't have to go during the day. You can go at night. So Jessica, Lewis and Clark.
Right down in my
Yeah.
my mom is
Also, didn't the Supreme Court just do a new ruling of like they don't have to take the bar exam?
Yeah, so Oregon, a lot of states during COVID had to figure out how do we accommodate the fact that nobody can be in the same place, so they can't actually take the bar. So there was kids who needed to take the bar, or law students who needed to take the bar that had to push it off a lot. And then they actually just started practicing. And so then they saw, okay, this bar thing is actually kind of exclusive. There are people who don't test well, but they're good attorneys, you know? So now you don't have to take the bar necessarily. You can practice under an attorney for a year and a half, I think that's a requirement now. And that attorney could then sign off that you've learned the basic skills of being an attorney, and then you could be eligible to be licensed on the bar. So It's a lot longer process. I recommend that if you do test well, you just take the bar, because that's like a 3 months intensive study, and then you take the bar, and then you have your license, and then you get paid well. I mean, depending on what you're doing. But if you are doing this 1.5-year process, you're not getting paid well. I think there's a minimum pay, but it's not great.
I know doctors have to do like updates on their like licensing. So for lawyers, do you have to like take tests after the bar?
Super good question. We don't have to take tests. Hallelujah. Once you pass the bar, there's no tests, but there's a lot of education. So there's a minimum education of 15 hours per year that you have to do. One of those is an abuse reporting. One of those is a ethics. And then there's like a diversity. And then the rest of it is just general. You can study anything you want in any law. So as an immigration attorney, I'm always studying immigration law. So there's a lot of courses that I can do that are going to be specialized courses. Some of them are going to be generalized immigration. But I'm always going to try and find those courses that are going to help me in my practice and be a better attorney. And so then you have to report those to the bar. So as a licensed attorney, my license is with the Oregon State Bar. And I could be licensed in other states as well. Once you're an attorney for 5 years in Oregon, you can actually get licensed in like Washington, Utah. There's like 30 states where I could apply and get licensed just because I've practiced for 5 years without any disciplinary action. If you have disciplinary action as an attorney, you should really revisit your life choices. Because that means you're really doing something wrong. So as long as you're a good attorney, you can be licensed in these other states. But the thing is, you have to pay. So you have to pay for your insurance in each state that you're practicing in. The insurance is $3,000 a year. And then my education credits, I have to pay for those education credits. And so when you're with a firm, almost always they're going to pay for those things for you because you're doing work for the firm. So the firm's going to cover your licensing requirements, basically. You personally have to take the time to do the credits, to do the education, but yeah. But no tests, no more tests. Mm-hmm. There might be quizzes on those education courses, but I have never had a quiz. It's mostly just like learn it and then go do it. Okay. Any other questions? This is a really good question. No. Okay.
Any questions on the chat by chance?
Oh yeah.
For this? Okay.
So Lewis and Clark, let me just say real quick, if there's programs to be an attorney to like law school, doesn't have to be full-time. Lewis and Clark has a really great program where it's in the evenings and you can do it over 4 years or even 5 years. You can take the courses at your pace and then you can be doing internships while you're doing that. So that's a really good option. I think there are some other states who have law schools that offer that. If you're going to be practicing in a certain state, it is helpful to be in law school in that state. You end up meeting a lot of people who end up staying in that state and practicing. But that's not necessarily the case. I practiced I went to law school in Utah. Almost all of my friends from law school are still practicing in Utah, but there are a lot of us in different states and we stay connected. As a law school group, you always stay connected with your law school classmates. And it's a really good referral basis. So that's one reason why going to school in your state is helpful, because then you're asking each other, hey, who does this kind of law, who does this? And then you're referring clients to each other. And also, if you're going to be studying in Oregon, you could then be connected with different attorneys here and start practicing before. You can't be practicing, but you could be learning before you become an attorney and have an in. So we always have law clerks. We have one law clerk right now, and she's graduating from Willamette next year.
Yeah, next year.
Yeah,
in the spring.
And so most likely she will end up working at our firm. We know her, we trust her. We've seen that she can learn, she can do the work. So that's one way to get in.
Yeah, and then also she refers other classmates when she has to take a break, from doing internship work. So she refers other classmates. So it's also good to have that extra connection with other students, because they get to tell you, oh, this place is good, or this place I was able to learn that, and just get like an idea of where to do your internship where you learn more.
Willamette and Lewis and Clark both have, I think Willamette has a more robust immigration training right now. Lewis and Clark has some, and I don't know if Oregon State University of Oregon, if they have any immigration. So we haven't met anybody from down there.
No. So. And then I'm from Oregon, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Does Portland State have?
No law school at Portland
No
State.
law school at Portland State.
No, the three are Willamette, Lewis and Clark, and University of Oregon. Yeah. There's a really good one up in Spokane. Gonzaga is a good law school. and I think they're affordable. You have to take what's called the LSAT to get into law school. So after you do your bachelor's, you do the LSAT, and there's LSAT practice courses. I really recommend you take them. I ended up being a lawyer because the guy I had a crush on in undergrad asked me if I wanted to go take an LSAT practice test with him. And I was like, shoot, yeah, we get to go down to Honolulu together. We'll take this practice test, get to hang out with you. And then he had a girlfriend, so I don't know what I was thinking, but I got to go and take this practice test, and I smashed it. Like, compared to him, I was like, oh, I actually did pretty good. And he had to snag all these LSAT practice courses. Neither of us were prepared. Like, there was actually an LSAT practice course we could have taken, but we didn't really have it on our radar. We were graduating. We're like, what are we gonna do with ourselves? So he's like, hey, let's go take this practice test. And I found this box. He found a box at school. I went to a littler school than Gisela. So it was just in like this cupboard, and he found this box of books, LSAT practice books, and he just took them. And I think it was fine. My professor knew about it. And he's like, I found all these law school, these LSAT practice tests. So we studied in my professor's office. She gave us her office, and we just go in between classes in our last semester of school, and we would practice 6 hours a day of these practice tests for the LSAT. And we practiced for 6 weeks, that whole semester. And then we took the course, we took the test, and we did well enough to get into law school. He became a JAG attorney, so he went into the Marine Corps, and I went to BYU over in Provo. He went to Willamette. That's where he studied, was in Willamette. So both good schools, but you can look at deciding when you are going to law school. Like, I went to BYU because it's a better law school than Willamette. It's ranked better. I was like, well, if it's a better school, I should probably, like, it has a better ranking, I should probably go there. I actually had a blast. It's a really good school, but it didn't have anything like what I wanted to do. So I ended up doing a lot of my own work when I was in law school, figuring out what I wanted to do. I worked a lot with the refugee community when I was there. But yeah, so just some ideas to be aware of as you're planning. Education, is it a competitive field? Yeah. I think it's competitive in that you really need to be, you need to be good at what you do.
Yeah, they always say you have to have like 5 to 10 years experience in certain things. Like Alicia has this, like, talked about, she has other experience in helping other communities. Volunteer work is very much a plus for you guys, wanting to go into these fields. And just having those extra experiences, say, like, for example, as a legal assistant, as I said, I don't have like a degree or a bachelor's degree in like paralegal work, but because I worked as a legal advocate, I have language skills, I have customer service skills. Like, most of us as paralegals, we have worked like either retail or food industry, right? So we have those extra things to also help back us up with all these aptitudes and skills that we talked about. So yeah, just having that competitive and that drive to like wanting to learn more is always a plus. Always like learning a new language is very helpful. Just be mindful of where you are located and where language is more dominant there. For example, here, Spanish and English are more dominant. We do have some clients who come from Fiji, from Afghanistan, Ukraine. Some also come from Africa and have the stronger dialects. So you just have to be patient. Again, just very patient. But yeah, just being able to learn new things is also helpful.
I think also being flexible with your understanding, like she said, a lot of accents, like a lot of people do speak English, but it's with a really heavy accent. So you really got to be patient with your understanding and really try to attune your ear to that accent so that you're not having to ask them to repeat themselves and they just say it the same way. So it's not going to be super helpful to repeat themselves. But yeah, that's really important, is expose yourself to other languages, go travel. Don't just do one thing. Like, most of us took about 10 years from high school to the time we graduated law school to become an attorney. And we didn't take a really quick route of like, you could, go to undergrad, do it quickly, graduate early, do law school, you could be done in 6 years. And I did have some friends who did that. They're fine, they're great, they're living a great life, but they didn't get to do all the travel, and they didn't get the exposure to other cultures and to other lifestyles. And And other ways of like other careers even. We have one of our attorneys was a hairstylist before she became an attorney.
She has
So,
really nice hair too.
yeah. And one of them just volunteered a ton with refugees and asylum seekers, and then she decided, oh, I want to be an attorney, I want to do this as an attorney. There's not enough Latinas in the immigration field, especially in Oregon. There's a very underrepresented, and it would be really, really helpful to have more attorneys that are actually, because the population here is mostly Latinos. Most of our clients are Latinos. And I think it would be not just helpful for the clients to have an attorney that understands them fully culturally and language wise, but also that they can see themselves. Like I want kids to come in, and a little Latina girl, I want her to have a Latina attorney. Like I want her to see like, oh, this is somebody I can be, have that inspiration. So I'm always like, go to law school. All the girls like, go to law school, get your law degree. Because it really is just a matter of getting the schooling. A lot of people are fully capable of being attorneys. It's just a matter of getting the schooling and being in the right mindset. So the competitiveness at becoming an immigration attorney, it is competitive, where this is why I didn't become an immigration attorney until I finally did, because every time I looked at trying to get a job, it always said 3 to 5 years experience as an immigration attorney. They wanted you to already have the experience as an immigration attorney before you started at that specific job. And so I never had the experience, and so I never even applied. But then I just said, all right, I'm going to do it no matter what. So either they're going to like me enough that they're going to hire me, or without this experience, or I'm just going to have to figure it out on my own and then get the experience, and then maybe I could get hired somewhere, or I just stay on my own. So I was really grateful that, because I probably applied to 12 different places, and I heard back from 2, and I interviewed at 2, and I went to 2 interviews at 1, and they lied to me, but they, I wanted to get paid. I wanted to get paid well, or at least what I felt like I was worth, because I knew that even though I didn't know immigration law, I knew I was a good attorney, and I knew that I could learn quickly, and I knew that I was going to work really hard for whoever I went to work for. And so having those assurances, that's what got me the job at Vanderwall, and I showed up, and I've done well. But you've got to be able to put yourself out there in the immigration field and get the experience. And it's often, if you want to be an attorney right off the gate as an immigration attorney, I'd say volunteer for places like, I have a list in the back. Lutheran Family Services is a big one in the area. SOAR is another big one. You can volunteer for refugee resettlement agencies. And then you get that experience so that when you are ready to become a full attorney, you already have the experience and you can come into it.
Do those places allow opportunities for like high school students, if they know that this is a field that they want to get into, like they can start volunteering now while
I
they're.
think so. Yeah, but also there are some volunteering opportunities at our firm where it's scanning. I mean, it's not exciting, but we are looking for somebody to come in and scan files for us and
do mail work.
And having that, like even just getting exposed at that level, you're going to be our first hire when we need something more, so there are things like that are out there right now. So there are lots of ways to get involved.
Just be mindful there are internships that pay and others that don't pay.
Yeah.
And then you just have to assess, will this actually help me in the long run? If not, you get to determine what you want to do. But yeah, like for us in paralegal work, everyone just has a lot of different things. Some don't even have like actual experience. They just simply did a really good job with like their own parents' immigration process, and we're like, all right, I got hired by the same firm that did my parents' stuff.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna continue helping them out with that. Or they started as secretaries and then move their way up as a paralegal. So there's always room for growth.
I think about half the paralegals we have help their parents with their immigration paperwork. And then they're able to say, hey, yeah, I've done the process because I helped my mom and dad.
Or we also have one who was in a graduate program for sciences, and she did a really good job with that. But she's like, you know what, I just want to change her pace, and came to work with us, and she's doing a really good job. So that extra exposure, also just handling stress really well. It is a high pace, high demand of everything, and you just have to be able to handle that. everyone's gonna interview differently. So just being mindful of like, what are the main key factors that, these hiring companies want or the firms want. You don't have to check all the boxes, but you just have to check like the stronger ones. For us, we really do encourage having the extra language because that's always going to be helpful, especially at least for paralegals, because you're dealing more with the clients, right, than attorneys tend to, because attorneys can have like us as translators, and they don't have to have much face-to-face time with them. But as paralegals, we do. So definitely language has been a key factor. We've had to interview a couple of times and it was just, you're really great, but we needed this extra thing, which was language.
Yeah, language is the number one thing.
Everywhere.
And then personability, like, is this person somebody who's gonna be a good team member? That's like the biggest thing we look at. Are they gonna fit in with everybody? Are they gonna be friendly and willing to help out and go the extra mile? Like, we don't work insane hours. We work pretty normal hours.
9 to 5.
Yeah, 9 to 5 for the most part. I mean, there's sometimes where we have deadlines where we're staying later and we're working harder, and I've gone in on weekends a few times, but for the most part, it's 9 to 5 and we all are pretty respectful of each other's time, and that we need to have lives. Like, it's important for us to have good lives in order to do good work also.
I was just gonna ask, what's the work-life balance like?
Yeah.
On both sides, right? As for the attorney part, but then as paralegal, is there some differences there?
We have one paralegal who stays late every day.
But that's just her.
That's just her. She doesn't have to. And it's usually me and her that are there, and I'm like, get out, leave, I'm leaving, you gotta go home. You know, we're not pushing people to stay late and work late. We really want people to be there at 9, leave at 5. We have pretty good vacation. I would like more, but everybody would. As far as like work-life balance as an immigration attorney compared to other legal work I've done, I think there's more work-life balance as an immigration attorney. There are a ton of deadlines, but if you have a good process with the firm, you can meet those deadlines. If you're not procrastinating, you can meet those deadlines and you're not working last minute.
And organizing is very important.
Yeah.
As for paralegal work, except for this, this coworker that we have who I'm just gonna say late. That's just her. But she is now a senior position, and because she has all these cases, you know, like from when she wasn't a senior paralegal, that's just her wanting to continue on with those cases. But for everyone else, if we have urgent deadlines, we try to meet them. Is before the deadline. But otherwise, everyone just like leaves at 5 or stays a little bit later by 5:30. But even like the main owner, which is Candace, she does encourage you to like get out of work because you know you have your work-life balance, you have family, or you have kids, so you want to give them their attention as well. So it's really nice. And then we have retreats, we have check-ins, and again, because of the team that we do have, everyone's just like really friendly with each other and respectful of their time.
Yeah, we have, not most of us, a lot of us have kids. And that was a big thing when I went into the firm, like, what's this gonna be like? I had worked full-time before, my husband wasn't working, but now we're both working. And so I needed to know that I was gonna have some flexibility, if a kid needed something. So on Mondays, it's only admin days, and I often end up bringing a kid in with me on Mondays, especially during the summer. I kind of rotate them through so they each get a day with mom. And everybody's super nice at the office, and so they're like really happy to see everybody at the office, and everybody comes and chats with them, and they go chat with everybody, and it's really nice that way. And if there is ever an emergency, a family emergency or a medical emergency, we all chip in, and we just want to make sure that that person or that person's family is okay, and so that person gets the time that they need to be with the family, and that's never a question.
Yeah, no, definitely communication. Also, we completely forgot to put that in the aptitudes and skills.
Oh, yeah.
Communication is also a very strong one. Not just with clients, but like Elisa said, we also have to have communication with us so that we all know what's going on, and we're not like, hey, where's this person? Like, are they okay? Unfortunately, we recently had someone be in a car accident as well. So just having that communication with them, knowing that they're okay, and making sure that they are not stressing out about their case workload because that someone else can like step in and help out.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of flexibility. It's not like you can't have a life out of like the office, right? Which is really nice because that was my understanding as a high schooler going into like college and stuff. I was like, no, I don't want to do legal work because everyone has like the work-life balance or the family life balance, but, I'm able to see that with our current attorneys and they handle it a lot. Like, everyone has more than one kid and it's like, they're like on the go, and they're super moms and super attorneys too.
Yeah.
Yes, I can see all those TV shows, but they're, Bob watches and they're always working late at night or on the weekends. I'm like, oh my God, how do you?
Yeah, no, so there are, if you become an attorney, there's lots of different kinds of attorney work you can do, and those are mostly corporate attorneys. So there are, like, in New York, I had a few friends that went to big firms. There's a law firm called Cravath. And my friend that went there, she was married and her husband was also an attorney, but he worked from home. He had a really good work-life balance, and she worked at this big law firm that is known for like sucking your soul dry. And she would come home and cry on his shoulder, and he had these shirts and they would call them the Cravath shirts because she had mascara on and it would stain his shirts. So he had his Cravath shirts and he would try and like have it on when she would come home because she would cry every night when she came home. It was horrible. So there are those kind of law firms where you are working, like, you know, they're expecting you to work 12, 16-hour days. You get a little sleep, you go back, you're in the office, you're there on the weekends. You're getting paid a lot of money. And some people decide, okay, I'm going to do that for the first couple of years out of law school. I'm going to go work at these big law firms. They're going to suck my soul, but I'm young. I got enough soul left. I'll be fine when I leave. And they are, like, they've recovered. They're fine. They made a lot of money when they were first there, and then they got a lot of good experience and they're able to go do something different. I don't know any kind of immigration firm that is that way. Most immigration firms are going, I think the amount of FaceTime that you have to have with clients, you couldn't live a life like that and do immigration work well, because you really need to be able to connect with people. Corporate attorneys, they barely talk with any clients. They're just doing big caseloads, and yeah, so different kind of work.
I
Better
definitely
work-life balance.
encourage everyone who wants to go into a legal field or a law firm or immigration law firm, just do your research on the company, right? Ask, like, if you know anyone that will currently work there, like, hey, how do you like it? What's the work-life balance there? What are the requirements there? How does that day in the life of that law firm look like? Because everyone works differently. There's some that are a lot bigger, as we are still very much growing. So we have more of that, like, one-on-one, if you will, with like everyone, right? But as the firms grow, there's gonna be a lot more cases, a lot different procedures. So just be mindful of that, especially going into internships or the volunteer stuff. You get an exposure of what that looks like. And if that's like the better fit for you, you have an idea, oh, I want to do corporate, or I want to do something less intensive.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, when you're interviewing, ask those questions at the interview. What's the work-life balance at this company? What can I expect as far as what you want from me? And make sure that they know, is that something that you can do? And also, is that something that you want to do? And if it's not, there's other places, there's other opportunities. Don't kill yourself unless you want to, unless that's your goal. Not to kill yourself, but if that's your goal, to like work really hard and you know that this is what they're going to want from you, there is some value in that. Just know that, you know, there's a time and a place for that sort of thing. You can't raise a family well if that's what you're going to be doing. And I do recommend raising a family. It's pretty great. What was the next thing? How does your industry address needs? Oh, we kind of brushed over it. COVID-19's been rough. It's set us back in the immigration field because they lost a lot of people. Processes slowed down a ton. And now we're looking at getting a new president. The new president, if we get a new president, we may have the same president. If we get a new one, we can expect a lot of things in the immigration field to change again. They changed a lot when Trump came into office. A lot of people left, and they ended up, things that used to be safe for clients became less safe. We had some clients who, where we could put things on a U visa before and they were fine. But then when Trump came into office, he actually ended up deporting people who had U visas pending, depending on what was in their application. So, yeah, it's a little scary. We're scared for our clients, and we're telling them we're trying to get as much done we can before the new election cycle in the event that there's a new president, because we don't know how things are going to go.
Yeah, for those, like, our firm took action in adding like advisors, just letting the clients know what they are taking a risk at, you know, not just like their time or money being invested. It's also like a gamble pretty much. And that's what immigration is, right? Or immigration law is all a gamble. We can't ever say, oh yes, I truly believe this will get one and like give high hopes to clients. You can tell them it has a possibility, but just being mindful of that because you never know what can happen. Because immigration is so like ever changing. You can't ever say for 100% this is gonna be okay.
I had a client and she was like, okay, what's the percentage of this is gonna be okay? And I was able to say like 75%. We've done cases like this before. It's been fine. And now she's one of the clients that I'm waking up at night thinking about because we actually just got a case very similar to hers before they were being approved, and that one just got denied. And her case is similar to that. We haven't filed it yet, so now I've got to go back to her and say, okay, they've changed. Before what used to be okay is not okay now, so we need to change our strategy. So we constantly have to be doing that with all of our cases.
Yeah, and we're hoping that there are more. Sorry, go ahead.
How do you have those like difficult conversations where you were like had high hopes for someone's case, but then you have to go back and be like, it's not looking too good. Like, how does that?
We actually have seminars about how to have difficult conversations.
I mean,
That's a good
yeah,
question.
and even before those seminars, it hurts. I don't know if you want to go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of being an attorney and a legal assistant is you have to be okay having those hard conversations. Like this is something that's very important to this person's life and it's going to affect them and it's not going to be fun. Sometimes it's not going to be fun. And so I think I always approach it when I first meet with somebody, there's no guarantees. Often they're looking, they're saying, okay, can you guarantee this for me? It's like, I can never guarantee it for you. No immigration attorney who's worth what you're going to pay them is going to guarantee this for you. If you have an immigration attorney that's going to guarantee you an outcome, it's a scam. Like, because it's not, you can never be guaranteed. And so we always try and set the stage with that in our first relationship with the client. So they understand that things do change. There could be a point where we're going to have to come back. We do reimburse. If it's something where a policy has completely changed and it's just kind of like, it's messed this person over, we try and reimburse what we can. If it's so that, you know, they're not hurt on both sides.
Well, from the very beginning, right? You do the screening and people, because they heard it on the news, oh, if you have someone that's 21 years old, that can petition for you, great, that's all you need. But then you have like the whole backstory, right, of the client in the initial screening. So you have that difficult conversation from them from the very start. And then if they make it to the consultation stage, because they have like more than one entry, right, without like a valid entry or a visa, then that may hinder them and they don't actually have a form of relief. So even then at that stage, the attorneys have to come. You have like a U visa opportunity. You have someone who's been abusing you, who's a spouse or a child. And if they say no to all those options or like extra possibilities or even for PIP, which is a military position, then at that stage, we have to tell them you cannot move forward. So, and just telling them we have these other options, but you have to be able to qualify for them, of course, right? So that's another extra like difficult conversation with clients. And then recently I've had cases where they did the consult, they brought me all the stuff, but now like putting everything together, especially for example, this case was with a background, which is the Dreamers Act. And they were able to try to adjust their status because they had a spouse who's a US citizen. So ideally, right, that's really great. You have something that helps them do everything within the US, but because on their consultation, they disclose a date that contradicts everything that's been already submitted with immigration, then we cannot do anything because then that hinders them. And as attorneys or even paralegals, if we're given information that contradicts stuff, or we're given too much information sometimes, we cannot ethically help them or continue on the process because we then hinder them. So we have to have those difficult conversations with them and just give them a whole spiel of exactly what happens step by step and being clear with the clients of what's going on. So in that way they understand what's happening. Like Alicia said, we do give them reimbursements for the situations because it just simply wasn't caught at the very beginning, right? And it's a lot of time already invested by the clients. Also, we are constantly learning about different policies. And for example, VAWA, even though we have LPR spouse can petition for you or legal permanent resident, they cannot technically be married So we learned that the hard way, and unfortunately, we had to tell this client, we can no longer move forward with your case. So fortunately, we were able to give her majority of the money back because she has been struggling financially. So in a way, you're like, I'm glad you got this back, but unfortunately, we can't help you at this time. So just being mindful of their feelings about it too, and just being straightforward and, just detailed.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. Like, you're telling them why. You're not just saying, sorry, we can't help you. You're explaining why. You're giving them as much information so that sometimes we can't help them because they told me that they have what's called a perm bar. They told me that they came into the US and they were here for a specific amount of time, and then they left, and then they came back to the US. And once I know that they re-entered the US illegally after having been here for more than a year, then I know that they have a permanent bar, and I can't put anything different on their application. So I can tell them, look, you have what's called a permanent bar. I know it now. I can't lie. I can't fill out your application and put a different date on there. Some people will go to another attorney and not disclose that second entry. And maybe, and sometimes they're able to be helped, So I can tell them that they can do with that what they want. But as soon as an attorney knows about a fact, the attorney can't lie about that fact. So
also with that, like an extra thing that's been affected with COVID has been like the record searches, right? We do record searches just to make sure like the valid entries are like okay, or that this person, if they were ever caught, we have a record of it, or just to simply see what the border knows without implicating like the actual client seeking those benefits. So for example, the client themselves can technically do it on their own. It's very nice and simple. And they can have an idea about their record history, and then do with that what they will also with other attorneys, because we already know information. We can't be too sure that that information is gonna be different, and they can go with other people. But we also have to be very mindful and careful about what language you use when telling them they have other options, because we don't want to be fully like liable, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the term.
Like, we don't want to tell somebody, don't go get your legal residency. We want them to know all their options and how they can get it and why they can't, and then they can think through it on their own, and maybe there's an option that they can think of. But if we know that there's a bar, we can't lie about it. Are there ways our attorney? Okay, just a few things. Disability. How do we help clients with disabilities? There's a lot of nonprofits that are set up to help so we're a for-profit company. So if you're going to come to our law firm, you're going to have to pay for our services. But there are nonprofits set up that if you don't have enough money to pay for an attorney, that they can help you with your case, but they're so overwhelmed that the cases end up not getting worked very quickly. And sometimes some things get dropped through the cracks. So we often have clients who they started with a nonprofit and they've come to us because they know that we're going to get through the case in a quicker manner. But as far as disabilities go, Gisela had a really good example. You want to give that example?
Oh yeah. So because everything of course is now going more virtual, we have availability to do consultations or even follow-ups over the phone. We are able to do everything through email or even video chat, right? And also our firm does pretty much cover the whole entire nation, so they don't even have to be within the same states, even
sometimes our clients are all still in another country.
Yeah. So we're very much flexible with like people who aren't able to come in person, right? For example, they have some disability of traveling. For example, we also had another client who is very much claustrophobic. So even though we have elevators or even options upstairs, they just were not able to get it to our fourth floor. So Alicia was able to meet with them in the lobby and like in person, and have that FaceTime with the client so they understand what's going on and have that sense of being seen, which is really nice. And then also, I mean, the person is that like we were able to like write, like back and forth with each other. I know that there's also like services like for the blind who are able to like kind of see. So I mean, there's pretty much everything. We're very much forward with being disability accessible.
The courts are very accessible as far as disability. They do try to get, if you need like an interpreter or there needed to be assigned, they have people that they can get. It is a little bit of a process, but there are always an accommodation so you can get to the court if you needed to.
Well, we have 8 minutes left.
8 minutes.
This has gone fast.
Oh, all right.
So I just wanted to give a chance, for either you, Olivia, or anybody, if Abraham or anybody from Hill High who's watching, if you have any questions that they haven't touched on yet. So now's your opportunity. Let's put the spotlight on you, Olivia.
I can, while you're thinking of questions, pay is gonna be about 45 intro for a paralegal starting out, 45,000 a year,
Depending also on experience.
depending on experience, and then it'll go up from there. There's always raises, especially at our firm, and then 65K would be an intro with a nonprofit as an attorney, but you're gonna also get loan repayment benefits with that. And then if you're gonna start out as a new attorney in the private sector, it's gonna be around 75, and then it goes up from there. You're probably gonna top out around 110 in the private field. But if you go work for the government as an immigration attorney, you're selling your soul, but you can do it. You're gonna get more like 120, 150 a year.
I was gonna ask, so when you said that there's like trying to draw more Latinx attorneys and paralegals in, do some of the firms, if you came in as a legal assistant, as a paralegal, and you want to go on to law school, is there education assistance at that?
Not that
or
I
is that
know of.
all pretty much on your own to
Yeah,
to
that would
navigate?
I honestly wouldn't be able to say because I'm not like pursuing a legal degree, but we have had some paralegals who were interested in doing law studies. So I don't know how they're being helped right now. I haven't been curious about that. But I mean, definitely being able to ask back and forth and getting like those resources, like Anissa said, networking, right? So you do internal networking and with like your attorneys, so you're able to get like an idea of like where to go and who to reach out to get those extra resources of like teach like either studying or like repayment stuff.
There are a couple questions in the chat. So the first one is from Abraham, and Abraham asked, what's an average day look like?
Abraham, great question. You want attorney or paralegal average day?
Well, one of each.
Okay, so I'll give my average day and then you give your average day. We'll do it quickly because we don't have a lot of time. Average day is I wake up, I take care of my kids, I get them off to school, I work out, I get to work around 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, I'm doing emails, I'm touching base with paralegals, I'm making sure that there's no fires that we need to take care of before I get into my workflow. 9:15, I start meeting with clients. Client meetings are typically an hour. That 9:15 meeting is 45 minutes because then I might have another client at 10. My days are either filled with meeting with clients, back-to-back new clients, doing intakes, or interspersed with intakes, as well as reviewing files and meeting with other attorneys regarding cases that we have. Often paralegals will come into my office when they can. They'll like, if my door's shut, they'll be like, can I come in? And I'll either wait them in or tell them, no, I'm on a consult. Consultation is same as an intake. And then about at 5, I look and see, okay, is there anything that I really got to take care of before I go home? Often there's something, and I'll do that thing and I'll leave about 5:30. I go home, my husband's already started dinner with the kids. Ideally, this is like a perfect day. And we finish dinner together. We sit down with the kids and we try, kids take a lot of activities. So we either are going to a sporting event that evening with the kids, or we're playing a game with them or watching a show, and then we're putting them to bed and starting the next day.
How often do you go to court?
Court's a good question. So everything that we're doing with the circuit court is online. I don't have to appear for any of those cases. So we're filing probably 5 to 6 new cases a month for that circuit court system. USCIS immigration, there's no court. So immigration, when you're just filing petitions for family, it's all just paperwork. You're not going to court. When you're doing asylum, there is court appearances. They are getting more into web appearances, but there is in-person appearances. And when I first started, there was a lot of cases that I needed to clean up because there was an attorney before that wasn't doing the best work. So there was a lot of work I needed to do in court. But since I've gotten caught up with that, a lot of times you can avoid going to court by just filing things ahead of time and being on task that way. So I don't go to court as much at this point. I think I've been once this year.
As for me, like, we start at 9 o'clock. I mostly try to tackle all my emails and like any communications with clients, if they have any like voicemails I have to get back to. That's throughout my day. I do have like scattered client meetings, but we try not to overbook ourselves because we still have to work up on things, right? So at least the typical 3 to 4 cases or client meetings that I have. And then I do my best to very much space out when I'm gonna be working on a specific task. And then we have a 30-minute lunch, which is nice. We get to like just
I forgot
round,
about lunch. Yeah.
we get to round up with other of our coworkers and just pretty much have like that distressor, like what's your day been like so far?
And Gisela and other paralegals are great about being like, hey, we're gonna order from so-and-so, and then anybody who wants to order food can. I have an attorney that I work with, and she brings me salads from Trader Joe's, and so we'll often have those for lunch.
You make sure we're not hungry.
Yeah.
And then depending on like what type of field you're obviously working with. For example, we have 2 fields. One is a family based, so that's a little bit more easy and mainstream, which is meeting clients, getting work done, and getting cases out onto attorney's desk. If you have any major questions, we ask, or we ask each other like, hey, can you help me out with this? But for removal side and like all that asylum petitions that we have to do, the paralegal would mostly like handle all the cases, and then we do like block off when we're gonna go to court to go file, because some of those filings aren't acceptable by mail, or they just take forever, and we just needed that to make sure that it was filed properly. So one of us would go drive over to court and like submit the forms and then drive back. So
They get a stamp showing the date that it was submitted, and you can bring it back.
So it's a little nice to get out of the office and like see the sun for a little bit and all the trees. But I mean, we have a really nice view of everything. We have Ross right there, so it's nice. You get to see it.
Ross is nice. I ran out of deodorant one day. It was not a good thing. I ran over to Ross, taken care of.
There you go. Yeah, so I mean, it's not so bad. Sometimes we just have to handle client phone calls that are very urgent. But most of the day it tends to be very much breathable. You just have like those random little fires that come up, but that's not every day.
As long as you're not procrastinating. Other question?
Yeah, so then from
Oh,
Hill High, there's a question that says, what would be some good classes to take in high school if you are interested in this career?
So I think getting some good experience with cultures in general. So anthropology, sociology is really good. Political science is great to understand how the government works is important. Language is the biggest one. Study your Spanish if you want to be in Oregon. If you're thinking about going somewhere out east, Arabic's a really important language. French is helpful, but most people who speak French will also speak English, and so that one's not as important. Mandarin is a really good language to learn. Portuguese is also, yeah.
For me in my high school, we just had very basic studies. So I'm like, whoa, all these options. But for me, just doing mostly volunteer work has been very much helpful. Getting into all that stuff. Language is a very big one. And also definitely English, and like making sure that you're really good with just your writing skills.
Yeah, that's super
because
important.
most of our petitions, and even just writing a simple cover letter, like we have actual examples, and so we don't really have to do a lot of back and forth with like, how am I going to compose this? But like writing closure letters to clients, making sure everything is like detailed, or even declarations for the client, making sure that it's all straightforward. And you do want to like pull out some heartstrings, of course. You want to make it explainable without adding too much detail, right? So that's where it's also important.
Yeah, that's super important. Writing is super important.
Writing skills.
Yeah, strengthen your writing skills. Olivia, do you have a question?
Do you feel like your communication skills have like grown from like high school to now, and like how did you like work on growth?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So
like always been like a natural like speaker.
so I feel like I have always been comfortable as far as like public speaking. That's something that in my church growing up, they made us speak in front of people from like the age of 12. So I had to like get up and talk in front of people. And I think that really helped me become more comfortable. And also I have a big family. I come from a family of 12 siblings. So there's 13 of us. So there's always a lot of people. So as far as like being able to communicate well was always an important thing for me. But my skills as a communicator have improved so much. I used to be afraid of writing I studied anthropology in undergrad, and that's a huge, like, I had to write papers all the time. It was like 2 or 3 papers a week that I was having to write. And I didn't feel like I was a very strong writer. And I actually thought about becoming a professor, but they have to write a lot. So I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I didn't really realize as an attorney, you also have to write a lot. So I became an attorney, and I felt like my writing was not strong. I still don't feel like my writing is super great. Like, we have an attorney, Claire, in our office. She's a great writer. And so I will write what I need to write, and then I'll give it to Claire, and I'll ask her to finesse it for me. And she's always happy to go through it and help me get better. But I do feel like, as far as speaking in high school, take as many opportunities as you have to do presentations, oral presentations. Take the opportunities in undergrad and in high school to take leadership opportunities where you have to be communicating and planning and coordinating with people, because that's a huge skill set that you need, is being able to do that coordination, being able to have those hard conversations, and being able to admit when you were wrong. That's the biggest thing. Like, we screw up all the time. I'm not always nice. I try to be, but I may not be nice to a paralegal one day, and she may get upset because of the way that I communicated with her. And you need to be someone who somebody could come to you and be like, hey, that wasn't cool. And then you got to be able to own that and go and apologize and make it right. Because you can't be productive when you have ill feelings towards each other. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is recognizing, like, you don't know everything. You're never going to know everything. The people that you're talking to also don't know everything. They're never going to know everything. And you're all just trying to get better together. And so when you're public speaking, to keep that in mind, like, I'm just a person. You're all just people. We've all been through different things, and we all are presenting the way that we're presenting because of those experiences that we've had. And we're going to continue to change and evolve as people. And we need to allow people to have that grace to be able to evolve as a person, and also know that they're going to give it back to us. And so we don't need to be nervous. We don't need to get caught up on, like, oh, she said that and now I'm all offended, or maybe she thinks this. Like, oh, that's just something she said. Okay, I'm going to clock that. But I'm not going to define that person because of that. And I hope they don't define me because of something maybe that I don't think about before I let come out of my mouth.
There's some great, if you're interested, Toastmasters is a national organization, and it is all around the art of public speaking. And they have chapters that are for high school students. And there are also chapters at the collegiate. Many schools have them, and then it continues on. It's really great organization to get involved in.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, definitely being in this work environment has definitely helped. Of course, I've had to do presentations in high school. For me, I was an avid, so we did a lot of presentations over and over again. It was very much scary. We even had to do like live debates, which is horrible. And then for me, I have a lot of the esses, so it just, doesn't help me.
You've done great. I haven't heard esses.
Oh no, I have. I definitely clocked them. But however, in college, now that I know.
Sorry.
In college, we also had to do a lot of presentations. Like, I was in a public speaking class, even though it wasn't for me, I just had to do it because it was like the basic entry level, right, as a freshman in college. Also, just making sure you raise your hand and ask all the questions also very much helps in building up that communication and knowing, like Alicia has pointed out, you're just gotta have room for growth and for criticism back. Because of course there is never a dumb question, but you're always like nervous. At least for me, I felt nervous just asking questions and being judged by everyone else. But you just have to ask and get that over with. And definitely working here, I've been less fearful of phones because I just hate having conversations with people over the phone, or even just asking and reaching out to other agencies and introducing myself to them. So I've just been more comfortable with my professional voice, right? And then even doing this little presentation with very little people here in person, I am very much fearful, don't get me wrong, but I'm able to do it a little bit more calmly now. So it's really good. Even having like those tough conversations with clients too. For me, when I get frustrated or like sometimes pissed off or just very much angry, I start to want to cry. So I learned how to like stop myself from doing that and just not take it personal and not show a different emotion to clients, which may be malinterpreted. So I just want to get my point across and just be like, all right, this is what it is. So you get better at it as you get more practice.
We try not to cry in front of clients, but it does happen, but we try and like, and then we go take a break and we'll cry to, cry to our friends.
You do have one other question in the chat from Abraham who asked, is anything like honors required or recommended? Can you easily get into an attorney job without them?
So as an attorney, nobody's going back and looking at your high school record, but you do need to have a good record in high school to get into college, and you've got to have a good record in college to get into law school. Depending on what job you have in law school, if you want to go and be a big, like after law school, if you want to go be a big corporate attorney, you've got to be in the top quarter of your class. If you want, and it's got to be at a really good law school. If you're not so concerned about being in the big firms where you're making a ton of money right out of law school, but you want to have more of a work-life balance, and you want to get into a career that you're really going to be able to excel at for a long time, then you don't need to worry so much about being in the top tier of your law school. But until you get into law school, you are needing to be looking at, okay, what can I do to show that I'm a good candidate for college? And when you're in college, you got to be looking at, what do I do to show that I'm a good candidate for law school? So depending on the law school that you're looking at going to, what are they looking at for their applicants? Once you're in undergrad, there's not really AP classes. You could be taking higher level classes, but you do need to get a really good GPA, and you need to do really well on the LSAT.
What is like the minimum or like required, I guess, GPA to get accepted into law school? Like,
so there's no minimum.
okay.
There's some people who get like a 175, 180 on the LSAT, and they've got like a 2.0 grade point average, but I'll tell you, they don't do good at law school. Like, they'll be accepted, but the friends that I've had who did that, like, they're good, they're geniuses. They don't do their work. Like, they're like procrastinators. Like, somebody like that, they're genius. They can go take a test and they can pass it like with flying colors, but they can't do the day-to-day work that it requires to get through law school. And then if they get through law school, they're not passing the bar, because the bar, you can't like cheat your way out of that. You actually have to study for that. There's like, maybe they could practice now doing this new thing, but yeah. So sorry, what was your question?
Oh no, it was just asking if there's a part of GPA, and then Abraham was asking if there was any type of honors that. Yeah,
so there's no GPA requirement, but really, if you want to get into a good law school, you want to be like 3.5 or higher. For 3.5 is really the lower end of a GPA with a somewhat good LSAT score. So it's always minimums for the LSAT score. That's more what the law schools are looking at, but then they'll combine that minimum of the LSAT score and look at your GPA. If you've got a higher GPA and a little bit lower LSAT score, then they'll take that into consideration. If you have a little bit lower GPA and a higher LSAT score, then they'll kind of average that out as well.
Also, I just want to point out too that, for example, for me, I graduated at 3.6, but then because I took extra certification courses, I was able to bump up my GPA overall. So that also helps out too if you need that extra boost. And you find something that like helps you with a specific area. So definitely don't just be centered in, this is the only college I have. These are the only classes available to me. You can always reach out to other courses.
Figure out how to get your GPA bumped up. Yeah, that's smart.